in order for you to perceive the world as alive, you have to first see yourself as part of the world. So you're not separate from the air, you're in it, you're a part of it. The earth is treated as immaterial, as something that's dead, that's not alive. In modern industrial science, views the world as dead. And therefore, it's a self-justifying belief system that allows you to exploit it, because if you're exploiting something that's dead, you're not hurting anything.
Okay, so here we are doing an environmental video on what we basically feel has changed in the past few years and what it's like going forward from here. These students are asking questions of their own, and we're comparing them to the questions that were asked back in 2022.
So I challenge anyone, for example, to hold their breath for more than 15 seconds and see how long they're going to last. Because if you do that, you're going to realize very quickly that you cannot live without the air around you. When you see the world as living, if you harm the world, you're harming yourself. And climate change is the perfect example of that. You know, we're polluting the atmosphere. The atmosphere is what we need to survive. Water is what we need to survive. So if we poison and damage all the drinking water, we're not going to survive. There's a famous quote from a Native American from a long time ago, something like, you can't eat money and you can't drink money, right? At some point you might accumulate all this money, but if there's nothing left, you destroy all the forests and destroy all the water, you cannot sustain yourself on money. You're going to die.
That one small cup that you both just let fly away without a second thought, that may happen in one of the oceans around the world and will never decompose. Your footprint is forever. I'm here to take you on a journey to see the extent of both of your actions.
So there's a practical reason for perceiving the world as living. People may have different experiences in their lifetimes of being in the sea or being in the mountain or being in the forest, where they just feel this kind of oneness. That's it. That experience is that connection of realizing that you're a part of it all. So I once when I was in graduate school, took a class, an anthropology class, and the professor was a very famous anthropologist, and he was telling a story about, I guess someone was doing field work in Central America, and there was a Mayan talking about, and the Mayan was saying that the bird had spoken to him. And this professor said, well, and of course the bird didn't speak to him, that's ridiculous. And I thought, why is that ridiculous? Hasn't anyone in this room, seeing this, don't we speak to animals all the time? Like our pets, for example, or people who live on farms. I remember after it all happened, and I was thinking like, wow, did I just enter into the consciousness of chickens and a rooster? But I did, because I had been on this journey, I'd been walking, and my normal state of mind sort of fell away. And I sort of, what some philosophers call, I was experiencing firstness, like first contact with reality. It was unfiltered by all the stuff that my brain, culture and language imposes on it. I was in it, fully aware and fully present without having to interpret it with, the conditioning that my upbringing has given me. It's a normal experience for, I would say, the majority history of humanity. Most humans have historically been in an environment where not only do they communicate to animals, but to plants. I realize if I say something like that, it sounds ridiculous, but to me, I've experienced it, so I don't find it that ridiculous.
We're out here recording B-roll film for our environmental documentaries, and I think the environment's really important because we only have one Earth, so I feel like we should really take care of it.
We're recording B-roll footage for our short films about the environment. I think what we're doing is great. It gets out the word of what we're doing here as our local community at Cedar Ridge, and then also just able to share what needs to be done.
Hey kids! Have you seen one of these before? Maybe you have one at your house. Maybe you've seen your parents use one. Do you know what it is?
It's a recycling bin.
What's that?
It's this cool thing that allows you to reuse things you already have around your house.
That's awesome. How does it work?
Did you just see that? That could have been you. Or, even worse, you could have caused that. Where should I go to throw away these little things then, if they're so dangerous?
Hey man, what do you think you're doing?
I was just recycling some stuff, bro.
A plastic bag? Are you kidding me?
Oh.
What's this? A styrofoam cup too? Are you serious?
See all these things around me? These are things that people need to know about recycling. I actually try to recycle a lot, and I don't like throw away trash into the recycle, I guess.
Ways people could help the environment is just by reducing the amount of waste that they use.
This is why you want to use the iceberg model, because the media example is the tip of the iceberg. It's the news report is the event but what's behind that? Well, we have to examine the structure of the media business. Like in the past, if you made 5% profit at the end of the year, that was considered to be great. But now you have to earn 25%, because that's what the global economy demands. The economic structure of the media is very important to understand, because that's what drives the way that media is produced. And this is what we call the economy of attention. So the way that media companies make money is when you look at something. And what are people attracted to? Conflict. I'm sorry to say, but that's what gets people's eyeballs. It's like the more outrage, the more people are engaged. There are good news stories. There are people doing great work. There's a lot of positive going on in the world. Be your own storyteller and put out those stories. Support media that don't depend on outrage and don't depend on conflict. There's public-supported media, which gets money from the government, and so you can support policies. Or listener-supported media like Democracy Now! There are ways to talk about the environment that turn people off. So I think there's a phrase like doom scrolling, where you just like all you see is doom and doom and doom and apocalypse. And oftentimes I feel like I'm kind of perpetuating that, because I'm trying to name the problem, and it's depressing. It's like it's bad news, right? But on the other hand, you have to then uplift all the work that people are doing to make changes and support. There's that saying, if the tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? Well, in the media world, in some ways, that's true. So how do you record that sound? You have to go out there. If I say, it's raining outside, and my opponent says, no, it's not raining, what's the journalist's job? The journalist should go outside and see if it's raining or not. So journalists have to look at the science and be more accurate and truthful about that, and stop giving voice to the companies. So I think media literacy is really important. People have to learn how to, like when they see it, to be aware, like this is not real, this is fake. But also to try to prevent that from disseminating, and try to understand, like, well, why does the system promote this kind of content?
Because Americans only care about money.
I think there's a lot of danger, I guess. We've got like a big hole in our ozone. Those polar bears are like melting on ice caps, and we're almost out of oil. And I guess we're all just doomed, but what are we gonna do?
We just keep making the planet hotter, and that's not good.
I think all the big corporations are the ones factoring into climate change and
I feel like in their mind, the world could just be made out of cities that make them money, and they'd be good with that.
2.3 million pounds of wrapping paper get thrown away every single year.
They say it's bad for the environment, but look, it's way too pretty to be bad for the environment.
Can you see the clouds in the paper? People look at the paper and think, where are the clouds? Well, clouds are white. Maybe the paper's white, so we can see the clouds because the paper looks like a cloud. What he's saying is that the clouds are in the paper. And how do trees and plants grow? Well, you have evaporation from the sea that creates the moisture in the air that creates the clouds, and the clouds come and the rain comes down and it feeds the plants, and the plants evaporate and there's moisture coming off the plants and it goes back and you have the cycle of water. Without the clouds, there is no paper. And so that's what systems thinking is. You see the relationship between all things. So you see that this paper is not just a thing separate from the world and isolated by itself, but that it cannot exist without being part of a vast system of production. Rare earth minerals, and anyways, those all have to be extracted from the earth. Santa Claus doesn't make this phone. It comes from the earth, right? We have this idea, this illusion that somehow, Amazon is like the Santa Claus's workshop, and there's a bunch of elves that just like magically make these things. That's not how it works. These come from the earth, and the batteries require cobalt and lithium. Wherever these minerals are extracted, there's also exploitation happening among workers, but also exploitation of the land. And the land, the local ecosystems where mining takes place gets trashed. Violence seems to accompany this process of mining. And the processes of mining continue to be places of exploitation and violence. Even though we don't technically live in the colonial slave world anymore, those behaviors still exist, and they're still supported by the global system. It's very hard to trace the source of your minerals once they enter into the global supply chain. But on paper, at least, they're claiming to try to reduce the amount of exploitation, and that only is as a result of people being active and sort of pushing back and saying that this is not right. Our technological system and our media system requires massive amounts of energy. Imagine and believe that somehow information is immaterial, like it's just sitting in the air, I can just grab it. That's not true. It lives on machines, and those machines are plugged into the wall, and that wall gets electricity from somewhere. A large percentage of fuel that uses to power the data cloud, going back to clouds. What is the data cloud? But it's a system of server farms all over the world that are interconnected through cables and satellites and so forth. Those are physical places, they're buildings with machines, and they require massive amounts of energy. And they're all using mostly fossil fuel energy and water. Mostly young women work in these places. There's a lot of birth defects and women's health issues associated with manufacturing because people are exposed to chemicals. When you get this phone, whenever you buy a phone or a TV or whatever and it arrives to your house, you might notice that it has no fingerprints on it. Well, the last thing they do is they take a chemical and they wipe it so that you have no trace of humans. So you get, again, it reinforces this idea, oh, this came from Santa's workshop. Like, no one made this thing. In China, like Foxconn, they had such a problem with worker suicides that they had to put nets in the worker dormitories because too many people were killing themselves. This particular researcher makes that parallel, and he argues that, that mostly people who manufacture our gadgets are performing a certain kind of slavery, even though it's voluntary. At the end of our life cycle of our gadgets, what happens to them? Do they get thrown away? Do they get recycled? Do they go in a drawer? Or if you can find pictures or videos like in China or in India, where there are people, smelting, holding circuit boards over fires and trying to get those precious metals off, breathing this horrible toxic smoke, is going in the atmosphere and it's going in the water. And in order to justify extractivism, you have to have one, sacrifice zones. Sacrifice zones are places that are determined that they can be trashed and sacrificed for the global economy. The land can be sacrificed, and then you have the people who are disposable. We may act like we have somehow transcended all of this, but we have not in terms of the way the global economy is structured. Environmental communication, you have to name the problem to solve it.
This water's lame. That's not what you should be doing.
I think we could actually make an effort. I feel like people say they're going to make an effort, but then they just do the same thing without even thinking about it.
But I also think, having and looking into like starting a compost bin.
When it's too late is when the earth is actually already dead.
Then start reusing them more. Reuse, reuse, reuse.
I believe creative projects can promote environmentalism by bringing awareness to these issues on our Earth. From our documentaries to our photojournalism projects, our projects bring awareness to these issues.
You're probably wondering why I'm running after her. Well, it's because her recyclables will end up in landfills instead of becoming something wickedly cool.
They say Munich is so clean you can lick it. And there's some truth to that. It's just spotless. And my daughter was so upset because she grew up in Rome, and she's like, why can't we respect the city the way that they do here? Going to the eco-psychological point of view, I often feel like when people litter, it's almost like they don't see themselves as part of the environment, so they can just trash the environment because they don't see that they're connected to it. So when people are spiritually and psychologically and emotionally connected to the environment, they wouldn't trash it because it would be like trashing themselves. Not every society has different word, like a word for nature as something separate from humans. That's a modern invention. When capitalism was emerging and expanding into new territories, they had to define an other in order to justify its exploitation. The concept of nature emerges at the same time as the concept of race, because those two concepts were linked. And there's this idea that to be civilized is to be distant from nature. So this project of civilization that we are a part of is this increasing experience of alienation from nature. And there's an argument coming from eco-psychology. Because we are from nature, we are part of nature, and historically humans have always had rituals that help them bond with nature, in particular rites of passage. We don't have those kind of rituals in our society. You know, we don't know how to communicate with animals and with plants. They know the environment, but the environment that they know is a completely manufactured corporate technological environment, reinforces that alienation and disconnection from the natural world. And the problem with that is that not only does it lead to destructive behavior, because if we don't care about something, we're not going to take care of it. They know that we long for this, so they try to appeal for our desire to connect with nature, with the environment. So they have these car ads, you know, where you drive the SUV out into the wilderness, reminding us that we feel connected to nature, but it keeps us disconnected because we stay in the car. The earth becomes like an alien landscape, and we become the aliens, and we're always like flying in our spaceships, visiting Earth, but we're not part of Earth. And that is why we're here where we are today with the climate. You know, that we've created such a mess because we're so unconscious of how we impact the world around us that we're destroying the very environment that sustains us. So this is the ultimate contradiction. So if we stick with the status quo, it's suicide, but we don't know our way out of it. So we're kind of trapped in this this bubble, and it's hard to escape. I do think that you find in popular culture yearnings. It's all about ecological consciousness. Those natives represent kind of like our higher selves. And so that we have that in us, and we're yearning for that, but because we're disconnected from it, we're in a constant war. And so we're suffering because we're in a capitalistic society. The solution to that suffering is to buy more stuff. It's a very difficult conundrum to be stuck in. And I think young people know this inherently, but they don't necessarily know how to articulate it.
Quotation from my, Snow Story video. If you see the trees over there, they're like dancing in the snow, unable to feel the joy of it.
Ooh, bars. Ooh, let's wrap this up.
And one thing I noticed in studying advertising and media, if you look at media that's sort of future-oriented, about creating a better future, they often feature children, because children are signifiers of the future, of our future. And Native American cosmology, which is this idea of having solidarity with future generations. You know, there are people that have been fighting for a long time to make a better planet. So let's remember to have intergenerational solidarity with the people that also have been, who created Earth Day, who created the anti-nuclear movement, and civil rights. We have a important historical legacy to honor as well. Honor those elders.
We're walking back after taking our B-roll. I found this big stick and I really like it.
But it's February 20th, 2026. I'm really happy. So, are you happy?
Yeah, I'm happy.
But
what did you?
Media can have a powerful role in generating empathy for people that are going through struggles. There is a problem of like the apocalyptic storylines that sort of turn people off. There is a certain powerlessness that is produced through the messaging of the media. And in fact, the people that are a lot of the companies that are trashing the planet are taking advantage of that, saying like, oh, well, there's nothing you do about it, so you might as well just keep spending and polluting because, hey, Jesus is going to come save you, so, don't have to worry about that obviously is a very cynical point of view, and we don't want to encourage that.
The green plastic watering can for a fake Chinese rubber plant and a fake plant.
Yeah, so my focus today is to actually learn from students and from everyone here about what they think about climate anxiety and how true is it, like how big is it for like youth here? Are they going through it? What are the ways that they are fighting climate anxiety? What are the things that they're doing to cope? What are the support systems that they need and the things that they do in their day-to-day life to really fight for that anxiety, because it's not easy. Sometimes it feels isolating, sometimes it is very, it can be depressing to think about the climate and the crisis that we are in right now. So I'm interested to just learn from people here about what they think about climate.
My main focus to learn about today is definitely how and why we learn, like how what educators teach us.
I want to live. I don't want to be in a burning world,
Having solidarity with future generations is very important to cultivate. And so the youth represent this idea. They are the future.